Hello everyone, welcome to the Backtracking episode proper for tonight live, and we will start with the band's debut album, What Are You So Scared Of? Released in 2011, it will come out through Sony Music Australia and be produced by Mark Trombino. As I alluded to in my very brief history, these guys led by a girl did draw unfair comparisons to Paramore. One thing that kind of helped is their pop-punk emo leaning style with a few shades of alternative rock thrown in. Regardless, the album starts with the song Eject, 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 which is actually a 1.5-minute intro track, so we'll move on to the next song titled Breaking and Entering. And that song itself points to a difference in styles between Tonight Alive and Paramore, as the former has a more traditional leaning pop-punk sound, almost to the point of it being considerably more punk rockish. I mean, yeah, it's dressed up in pretty production, it was 2011 after all, and that shit was everywhere back then. But this band is talented enough to make it not come off as jaded in any way, which is pretty damn impressive in my opinion. I don't know what it is about this album that I specifically like, but it's got a really solid, catchy structure to it, and the band sound great, sure, but Jenna McDougal's vocal chops are pretty much peerless. And considering that this album is a whopping 14 songs long, that's a lot of good stuff that you're getting if you listen to it, which you should. It's got some good instrumental work, and the production really knows how to handle the sound of those instruments, making it easy to determine what's happening and when. The album also has a consistent tone lyrically about lost love, betrayal and hope, and in an odd way fear, and the delivery of that tone is rather well handled. My favourite song goes to Reason to Sing. Reason to Sing. It's quite an ambitious debut, but pretty much everything works and it makes a pretty good statement about the band's songwriting as well, and I think this one is worth a shot. Next is the band's second album, The Other Side, released in 2013. It will come out through the same label as last time, but we get a new producer for this one in Dave Petrovic. So the promotion for the band's previous album wasn't anything new, they taught to promote it and they did a good job at doing that, so when they were done they didn't waste time in making new material. They started by releasing a standalone single titled Breakdown featuring Benji Baden, which is quite the rub for the band, much like their debut had Mark Hoppus on the song Thank You and Good Night. Breakdown would become a Japanese exclusive bonus track for The Other Side, and this album itself starts with the song The Ocean. And yep, pretty clear indicator that the band has matured dramatically, which is surprising as their first effort was also very mature in terms of its content. Like their debut, this one doesn't shy away from the boppier sort of stuff, but it has more of a focus on an alt-rock emo sound, which I think works better for the band. It's a notable progression that the band had to make, and they take pretty much all of the right steps here. That's true instrumentally as well, with Wakayo Tahi being a standout on the lead guitar, and how the production really helps everyone else to shine too. I like an album where I can actually hear the bass, especially when the bass work is really good, and the drumming too is also just hard-hitting and very nice. And Jenna has improved a lot as a vocalist, adding some lovely vibrato to her voice and sounding more confident than she did on the debut. And there's also the lyrics, of course, about some of the same subjects with themes like hope, sadness, and reminiscing of our old friends and the times that we share with them. Well, you know what? I like this album. I really like this album. My favourite song goes to The Fire. Ooh. The Other Side shows a newer, more cohesive sound for the band, all tied together with quality production and top-notch performances from everyone involved. Next is the band's third album, Limitless. Bask in its glory. Released in 2016, it will come out through the same label as last time, and we get another new producer in Dave Bendeth. So tonight Alive were pretty busy touring off The Other Side, most notably playing on 2013's Warped Tour and contributing the song The Edge to the Amazing Spider-Man 2 soundtrack. And the band did hit a delay in the recording process as drummer at best needed surgery on his tendons, you know, those things that drummers need to be able to do the drumming. Anyhow, this album starts with the song To Be Free, and prepare your Chardonnay and take a long sip because yep, it's a good indication of the album's sound. And that sound is a fair bit different to previous efforts, as this one has a more alternative rock pop rock lean to it. And to be fair, yeah, it feels like a surprisingly natural progression of their previous album. It's a shame that this one isn't as fondly remembered when it comes to the band stuff, because people felt like it was a bit too different, even though the band never really made it a secret that they wanted to try new things, and in that way, this album really is no different than what the band usually do. And to be honest, I like the approach to it, because it feels like the band wanted to try and see if they could pull it off here, and they could indeed if this album is anything to go by. It's got some good structuring to it, showing restraint and maturity, and when the band go, they go hard, as you would expect them to at this stage. Lyrically, it is more pop-focused with the band's usual subject matter, so while there's not much new there, the new sound and glitzy production does at least back up the messages being told. I'm typically against this style, and I'll admit that this album isn't perfect, but it's not nearly as horrible as everyone else seems to think it is. My favourite song goes to I Defy. Sure, the album is ambitious and different, but it does work surprisingly well for an album with this style, and I'd recommend giving this a shot even if most others who actually know what they're talking about wouldn't. Seriously, I think this one might be the most underrated one. And finally, we reach the band's fourth album, Underworld. Released in 2018 through UNFD and Hopeless Records, it would be produced by Dave Petrovic again, and also, this was my first full Tonight Alive album! Yay! So, to bridge the gap between Limitless and this album, their longtime guitarist Tahi left and the band became a four-piece instead. Obviously there was touring too, but the only other thing that I really found was that there was a standalone single titled, somewhat ironically, World Away. This album does not start with that song, but instead the song Book of Love, and it's sort of a new direction for the band altogether. They take the more daring stuff that they did on Limitless and combined it with the maturity of The Other Side. Being stripped down to just 4 members probably did them some good too, even though Tahi is still a credited member of the band in this album's notes, so I don't know what the case is there, but I won't dwell too much on it. Another unique thing is that this album has 2 guest spots with Lynn Gunn of Paris and Corey motherfucking Taylor on the songs Disappear and the closing track My Underworld respectively. That is quite the rub to get, especially considering how good this album is besides that. The band sound as good as they ever have, and they lean more into an alternative rock style with this one too, leaving a lot of their poppier beginnings behind. That is more reflected in lyrics as well, with their usual themes of love and heartbreak, put under a different scope thanks to the different sound that's tried here. Again, the band just did something different that fits into their wheelhouse. It feels like they were building up to this anyway, and it does pay off. My favourite song goes to Crack My Heart. Underworld is another solidly performed and put together album, and it gets the band back into a more comfortable groove as well. So that's about it for this. I will most likely see you tomorrow for another PBW stream, and the next thing you'll probably see me for after that might be Fight the Night, if I don't get the next episode of Backtracking done, which in this case is going to be New York City's own punk rock riot girl band, the Lunatics. And as always, thank you for watching, you're awesome. Bye bye.